I am 10 years old. I'm in 5th grade at Valley Woods Elementary School near Bingham Farms, Michigan. My class is a combination. It's a combination of 5th and 6th graders, and our teacher is Mr. Hayes. One day, Mr. Hayes gives us 2 assignments. The first was a science project, and the second, an English paper. I don't want to do one project for English and another for science. I have another idea. What if I combined them? What if I wrote a play about the Scopes trial where the theory of evolution put forth by Charles Darwin was challenged? I asked Mr. Hayes, and he said yes. And I proceeded to write the play. I recruited students from all other classes and grades. They were in the play, they made the scenery, they helped me make the costumes and even sell refreshments and tickets. And I cast myself, the reporter, because I had a hard time memorizing my lines, and so I could use the reporter's notebook as my prompter. So when this play was done, it was a revelation, was recognized for putting all my abilities to work in one arena, in one creative project of my own design. I had the opportunity to be an artist, to be a storyteller, a producer, and to bring together a wide range of people in a creative project of my own design. It was a high point, and Mr. Hayes had recognized that and encouraged me, and really, it was one of the high points of my childhood. I never fit in a box. I was always asked when I was growing up, what did I want to be? What did I want to be when I grew up? And I never had just one answer. I pretty much knew what I didn't want to be, and it was a short list. I did not want to be a lawyer, I didn't want to be a garbage collector, and I didn't want to be a truck driver. And pretty much everything else was a possibility. So meanwhile, I was surrounded, particularly in my family, by people who had picked very much something that was a thing that you could be. My father was a lawyer, and he knew he wanted to be that from a very young age. My sister, who was older, also decided to be a lawyer and always seemed to have her next step clearly before her. I envied that, and somehow I thought that I wasn't up to things because I didn't fit into a box, because I didn't want to be just one thing. It did not feel good. In fact, it felt like it was not on a path to success. And I kept thinking I would wake up one day and be somebody who could fit in a box that had a label already. We've all seen forms that face us down with a lot of boxes to check. Gender, age, ethnicity, nationality, zip code, I could handle that, and occupation or profession. And it's that last one that still makes me shudder. But for some people, for some of you, it might be one of the other boxes where you don't fit into something that's pre-labeled and prefabricated. So we can all know what it feels like to be an other, to be somebody that can't check a box other than other. So I check other. And I haven't felt great about checking other for much of my life, but finally I realized that that was misguided. That's a waste of time to feel that way. That in fact, being an other is one of the best things that you can be. When I got to college at Brown, I pretty much took the classes that were interesting to me. I wanted to explore, and I took art and linguistics and English. I took biology and Russian and philosophy. But when it came time to declare a major, I essentially looked back at what I'd taken, and it added up to something that was called semiotics. Now, I'll bet very few of you have heard of that. I certainly hadn't. It means the study of signs and symbols. And at the time, it felt like a really weird default and didn't feel very good. But in retrospect, I looked back and realized that it actually did fit, that I, throughout my life, have combined the visual and the verbal words and images. So it made sense. But at the time, it really felt like it, again, was an other. So I finally realized that in my life, it is actually my otherhood. It is actually all the ways that I am multifaceted and bring things together that makes me bring value to the situations that I have pursued in my life. That it isn't something to feel bad about, it's something to accept. I don't fit in another box, and I would be more uncomfortable in another box than in the other box. So I finally gave myself permission. I don't think it was my family or really most people in the world that were telling me it was bad. It just was harder. It wasn't clear. It wasn't, often when you're doing things first, there isn't a box for it, but later there might be. I've been a lot of things, played a lot of roles, operated in many different worlds in my life. I've been a river guide, a revenue generator, a civic leader. I've been an artist and a human. I'm a relative and a friend. And I've been all of the above, and this is a partial list. So it's really through my Otherhood toolbox that I have navigated my way through these different worlds. And this is a lot in hindsight, reflecting on the fact that it's not a particular expertise that I bring to a situation, but often it's a way of seeing things. Sometimes those are character traits that are very natural to me, almost like breathing. And others are things where it's a skill that I've developed and honed over time. Many of them are not things that I have necessarily noticed myself, sometimes because it comes so naturally that I don't see it as anything special. So other people can often be a mirror for you and help you see what your special skills are and how they might be valuable. Scene 1. It's 1993. I work at the Palo Alto Weekly. I get a call from a guy in a garage, a Palo Alto garage, and he asked, would you like to put all the contents of the Palo Alto Weekly on the World Wide Web? And I paused. Meanwhile, this is 1993. The internet and the web are in their absolute infancy. So a lot of people might not have taken that call or certainly stayed on the phone with him and found out what he had in mind and how that might work and whether it was really feasible. So the Otherhood skill or tool that I tapped into in that situation was being curious. I decided that I would stay on the phone. I would try to learn what he had in mind and how it might work. And I ultimately used another Otherhood tool and said, yes. And that yes, that small yes, led to, early in 1994, the Palo Alto Weekly being the first newspaper in the world to be on the World Wide Web. And later, fast forward to 2008, Palo Alto Online is used all over the world and is part of daily life, not just here in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, but again, all over the world. So it was a small yes that led to that change in the world. And again, I didn't do any of this alone, but I did say yes, and I was curious enough to answer that call. Scene 2, going carbon-free. My whole life, I have been somebody who's loved spending time outdoors, and throughout my daily life have tried to find ways to steward our planet. And it's taken different forms, and it's very much used a variety of Otherhood tools. One of those tools is being open to everyone. And by that, I mean at a school where our kids were when there was no recycling program in the school, it was really tuning into the kids and the students who were bringing lunches that had lots of garbage and there was no recycling, talking to them to figure out how we might make a change. And later on, working with the mayor or the janitor in a commercial building or clean tech professionals or the utilities staff. It was talking to all those kinds of people to figure out how we might make a change and really take Palo Alto to where we wanted to go, which is to be carbon-free. And once you've talked to lots of different people and figured out what the solutions might be, another tool is really being the human glue. And if you think about glue, sometimes it's invisible. It literally, when it dries, you can't see it. But without it, all those parts, all those people, all those resources and assets would not be brought together to achieve one vision or one goal. So it's one of those skills that can, without it, you notice it's not there, but when it's there, you might not see it. Scene 3, scaling social impact. I work with an organization called SV2, Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund. And what we do is essentially try to take ourselves from the land of problems to a better world. And we do that by bringing together individuals who want to learn to become more effective givers and then invest their resources, financial and talents and time and networks to invest in innovative nonprofits and promising social ventures that are for-profits. And to do that, really, it's another Otherhood skill of connecting the dots. Those dots might be people, they might be ideas, they might be organizations, and they might be broader than that. It might be connecting the dot with a big idea. But to do that, you really need to sort of notice and see what's possible and be a finder. I find often that I can spot a person who might not seem like a likely person to join an organization like SV2 and find them in an unlikely spot, or identify an organization that might be a good fit, or some other way of connecting all the resources, all the parts. Scene 4. Again, throughout my life, I have been an artist and a curator of conversations. These conversations involve taking creative risks, which is another Otherhood tool. And they've played out, these creative, both conversations and creations have found their way into the world in a variety of ways. One way is through First Person, which is an interview series that I've done, that I still do, where I talk with innovators and leaders in Silicon Valley. And when I reflect on what those people have in common, they are all other people. They're people who have combined their interests and their skills in ways that are often very much ahead of their time. They are trailblazing. And by drawing that out, sometimes I find they even see things in themselves that they hadn't seen. They make connections about how they've taken a turn to the right or the left. And another example is during the election season, I was doing some drawing and found myself providing an illustration for a greeting card that landed in all the Walmarts and all the Targets of the US in the election section. So you never know where your work can land. I also started, taking a creative risk, an illustrated blog called Actually in Silicon Valley, sharing some perspectives that are not kind of the stereotypical view of Silicon Valley. And finally, Leadership Palo Alto is really it's a leadership development program for civic leaders, which brings together people from, again, very different sectors and interests and helps them find a way to become civically involved. All of these things involve taking creative risks and believing in the magic that can happen when there is collaboration and hope and just, again, trying something in a new way. Different perspectives are central to all of these roles. One is the hawk view, the 30,000 foot. I know they actually don't fly that high. But 30,000 feet up, you see the systems perspective. You see kind of the overview, how things all fit together. And back down on the ground, the 1 foot view, or the chicken view, people are figuring out how things actually work. They're operational, they're making things happen, they're building something. And in between is the hummingbird view, which is where I've spent most of my time. I have been a hawk and I have been a chicken, but it's the hummingbird that really is my Otherhood tool here, where it's traveling between elevations and then again around different stakeholders and perspectives. So these are my Otherhood tools. These are even just some of mine. Humor's another one. And I urge you to think about what are your tools, whether you're an other person or somebody that fits more neatly into a pre-labeled box. We all have a toolkit. And it's really, as Margaret Mead said, we're always remember that you are unique, just like everyone else. So it's a wonderful opportunity to think about these traits as opposed to being the best violinist or the best soccer player, all of which is great, but the way that you can bring it together as more than the sum of your parts. We need us all. We need the people who have spent decades trying to understand bees or to find a cure for cancer. We need people who are a combination, who are others. We need all of us to address the kinds of challenges that we're facing, whether it's climate change or violence or poverty in our world, in our communities. But we are going to get there because we all bring our whole selves, whether we fit into one neat box or not. And my father, the lawyer, was not just a lawyer, he was a civic leader. My sister, the lawyer, was not just a lawyer, she was also a talented weaver, among many other things. So we're all a combination. So I invite us to celebrate that and to bring it all to the world and to your work and to your life. And know that you don't have to fit into one neat box. I recently went to a social impact film festival, and when I entered, I went to the table where you got your name tag, and my name tag was there, and so were a number of colored Post-its. The Post-its were labeled with different options of who you could be, what your role was. Once again, it was categorizing. And social entrepreneur, media, storyteller, investor, and then there was other. And I decided, a little bit sheepishly, but honestly, to put all of them on my name tag. And I went off and walked around, and lo and behold, there were quite a number of people that had either all the colors of Post-its or most of them on their name tag. And I realized that I had found others, and it felt great. Thank you for listening, and thank you for looking.